Merry meet and welcome to my channel. I'm Raven Burns, and today I wanted to talk about why it's wrong to be too nice. So I think whenever someone comes into any kind of spiritual practice, whether it's Wicca or New Age or Buddhism or any Eastern-based religion or even any Western-based religion, I think that there's a stereotype of what it means to be spiritual. And I think that stereotype does us a disservice for many reasons, which I'll get into. But the stereotype, I think we can all agree on some basic stereotypes of spirituality. We tend to picture someone with a blissed out look on their face, someone who's always smiling, kind of blank, someone who speaks in platitudes and quotes Eckhart Tolle and wears long flowy dresses or sandals, and maybe their hair is locked or it's really, really long, like it's never been combed or cut. They don't eat much, and what they do eat is fruits and vegetables. What else? They do yoga. Anyway, these are the stereotypes of what it is to be spiritual. And one of the biggest ones is that everyone who's spiritual is nice and they never get angry. Okay, so this is problematic for many reasons. First of all, anger, in my opinion, is a good thing. It's an emotion like any other emotion, and no emotion should be denied, rejected, or dismissed. Because whenever you do that, what happens is it doesn't actually go anywhere. It just gets sublimated and it becomes a part of your shadow self. And if you're not in tune with your shadow self is basically all the things about yourself that you don't like and don't accept and don't want to be a part of your experience. Now, we all have those, but it's important to recognize the shadow, because then it's not a mystery. Then it doesn't get pushed into your subconscious and then acts out at the most inopportune moments. So that's why we end up projecting whatever we reject about ourselves onto other people. Have you ever seen a person who claims that they hate another person and you can't figure out why, because they seem like they're exactly alike, that they would be best friends? Well, in those situations, what's probably happening is that other person reminds them of their shadow self, and they have not made peace with their shadow self. So when they see it externalized, they get irrationally upset. So if we're trying to adhere to some sort of spiritual stereotype and we pushed anger into the background as something that we refuse to acknowledge or accept, and we think that in order to be genuinely spiritual, we have to never get angry and we have to be nicey nice all the time, this becomes a problem. So first I want to talk about why anger is good, in my opinion. So not only is anger natural, and it's just a normal human emotion like any other emotion, just like happiness is an emotion, anger is motivational. Okay, we don't want to get stuck in any emotion, including anger, but anger is what gets you off of your butt and gets you to make some changes. Now, that anger could be changes that you need to make in your own life. If you get so tired of being broke, for example, that you say, that is it, I cannot do this anymore. That can be the motivation for you to do what needs to be done to change your situation. Let's say you witness injustice and that just burns you up inside. You see someone being mistreated and it makes you so angry. That is not a bad thing. In fact, if injustice doesn't make you angry, you can't say that you're spiritual. Injustice needs to make you angry. Not out of control angry, not wallowing in anger, not being violent. We tend to stereotype anger as well. And we think of it as out of control. We think of it as violent. It doesn't need to be any of those things. What it is a deep rejection of something that is not in resonance with your higher self. And so there's a discord there. And the emotion that comes up is anger. So the emotion is just, any emotion is just letting you know that something is happening. It could be something that's off, something like, for example, you witness injustice, or you realize you are being used or abused or taken advantage of. The anger itself is not the goal. The anger lets you know that something is wrong that needs to be addressed. And then once you realize that something needs to be addressed, anger has no further function. Then that's when you transmute the anger into action. But the anger itself is not wrong. And it is wrong to pretend like you don't feel anger. That is not spiritual, okay? What you do is you take the anger and you let it motivate you to do something, okay? And to go along with that, there is nothing noble about being nice, okay? First of all, nice is one of the most boring words in the English dictionary, okay? It doesn't really mean anything. And what it does mean can be pathological. Nice can just mean that you never really offend anybody. Okay, and that may sound good on the surface, but never offending anybody is not a goal. People get offended for whatever reason, and that's theirs to worry about. Your job is not to worry about how other people receive you. Your goal is to live your life in such a way that you are in congruence with your higher self, and you're living a life that's peaceful, that is fruitful, that is impactful, and that is a demonstration of love on the planet, okay? Your job is not to go around not offending people. As a side effect for being your highest self, more people than not will appreciate your presence, but there's never any guarantee that anyone is going to be happy with you, like you, accept you, want you around. So going around trying to be nice is not good. And not only is it not good, it's really often just fear. People that go around being nicey nice, and that's kind of the only way you could describe them is nice, usually they're just afraid. They're afraid of people. They're afraid of other people's anger. They're afraid of being not accepted. They don't know how to stand on their own. They don't really stand for anything because they don't want to feel rejected. So that niceness is often just fear of being alone, or fear of taking a stand, or fear of, not having people like you. That is not spiritual. Okay, what's spiritual, again, is to use your incarnation, your life, your existence as a channel for good on the planet. And it's not to go around being afraid of other people. You have just as much of a right to live in this world as anybody else. So deferring and being passive and, falling to the background and shrinking back, that's not spiritual. Spiritual is being who the goddess made you to be and being proud of that, owning that, and then going out into the world and living that, okay? Being too nice can also make you complicit with evil and injustice. So people that are afraid to stand up for, let's say racism. If you hear something that's bigoted and your primary concern is being nice, you're going to be afraid to ever say anything, because you're worried about, again, what that person's going to think. And really all you're doing is allowing evil to flourish. That saying that evil flourishes because good people do nothing is accurate. So if you're being nice to people who are cruel, unjust, criminal, abusive, that is not actually being nice. You are part of the problem, okay? So what's the alternative? Okay, so when you come into a spiritual discipline, whether it's Wicca, which I'm a part of, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's New Age spirituality, whether it's nothing in particular, it's just, a spiritual, not religious kind of thing, you don't need to do anything externally. Okay, spirituality is in the heart, and it's evidenced in your life and in your speech and in your thoughts and in your actions. You do not have to wear flowy robes. You do not have to shave your head. You do not have to grow locks. Okay, you do not have to stop eating meat. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with veganism and vegetarianism. It's probably the kindest way to live on the planet. But that is separate from your spirituality. That does not define your spirituality. If you eat meat and you honor the life of that animal, and you're conscious that that animal's essence and qualities are reincarnating through your body, then it can be an act that is mindful and that is conscious. Is it the highest choice? That's for you to decide. But don't think that, oh, now I'm spiritual, now I've got to run out and do all these things. I have to join a yoga class and I have to wear sandals. You don't have to do anything different from what you're doing other than adopting your actual spiritual practice. And I talked last time about meditation, so that is one of the most important practices to adopt. But whatever it is that you adopt as your spiritual practice, a spiritual practice is one that reminds you of the eternal. It's one that makes you pull back from the surface level of life and causes you to see life in a deeper, more meaningful way. It could be just getting out in nature. It could be, standing looking at the mountains and realizing that you're simply a part of a higher ecology, a higher plan. It doesn't necessarily have to be going to a spiritual center or church, but it is something that takes you into the things that are eternal, the timeless things that really matter. And it has to be a daily thing. It has to actually be a part of your life. That's spirituality. And spirituality, the way you know if you actually have a practice or not, is if your life is starting to change, your attitudes are starting to change, your speech is starting to change, your disciplines are starting to change, and it'll be incremental. But from year to year, you'll be able to look back on your life, and if you are actually spiritual, you will see your life evolve. If your life is not evolving, but you're doing all these other things like wearing sandals and shaving your head, then you have to question your spirituality, because those things are just external signposts, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but they do not equal spirituality by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. And the other alternative to being nice is being authentic. Now that is the goal. When I meet you or anyone, I want to know what's really there. I don't want simply a smile. Now, I'm not saying that we should go around saying whatever's off the top of our heads and being offensive and rude. That's not the alternative. Authentic means being, speaking, being, acting in congruence with how you're actually feeling. It doesn't mean adopting some sort of fictitious character and being that. This is what a spiritual woman looks like, I am that. No, you are you, and spirit is trying to operate in, through, and as you. And whatever that looks like, that's spiritual for you. It will evolve over time, no doubt. But in the meantime, you must be who you are, and you must embrace all of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And worrying about what people think about it is not yours to do. Yours is to acknowledge it, to embrace it, to learn how to transmute it. So being authentic means being yourself. It means being who the God has created you to be. It means having a daily practice. It means learning to transmute negative emotions into positivity and integration and action. And it means periodically assessing that practice. So you do need to evaluate what you're doing, whatever you're doing, but certainly in terms of spirituality, to see if it's working or not. Again, if you're not seeing any growth in your emotions, if you're still flying off the handle at people at the drop of a hat, if you're still screaming at people in traffic, 3 years after you started meditating, then that's something to look at. You may need to adjust or even change your spiritual discipline, and ask yourself, are you really spiritual, or are you just attending a spiritual center? Okay, are you just adopting the fictitious character of spirituality, or do you have a discipline that allows you to get to know yourself on a deeper level? Because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We came from the goddess, and we will return to the goddess one day at our deaths, at our transitions. And in the meantime, what we are to do is allow the goddess to operate through us in our human form. The more we can do that, the more we get out of the way, the more our petty human ego battles are put to the side, and the more we allow the goddess to operate naturally through us, then that's us moving into a positive direction. That is spirituality. Okay? So make sure you're not being nice. Okay? The world doesn't need more nice people. The world needs more authenticity. The world needs more genuine spirituality. So in parting, I must say, as always, you matter. You are beloved of spirit. Go out there and shine. Peace and love.